The jungle was never quiet, but that night the silence was different, heavy, waiting. Private First Class Evelyn Carter knelt in the mud, her hands pressed against a soldier's torn chest. Blood seeped between her fingers, warm and endless. She was a medic, not a fighter. Her weapon was gauze, morphine, trembling sutures. And then the tree line erupted. Gunfire cracked. Mortars screamed. The night sky turned into fire. The platoon was scattered, officers dead, radio shredded. Men screamed for help, but no one was left to answer. Except her. They thought she was just a medic. They had no idea what the jungle was about to wake up inside her. What happens when the only one left with steady hands is the one they never trained to fight? You're watching the story Scape, where hidden courage collides with impossible odds. Before we dive deeper, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if stories of forgotten heroes keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit subscribe, because what Evelyn did in that burning jungle changed everything. The monsoon had ended only hours earlier, leaving the jungle thick with steam and the smell of rotting leaves. Bugs hummed in every direction, but even they seemed uneasy, as if the forest knew what was coming. Evelyn Carter had been in country for only 6 weeks. She was 24, fresh out of training, and assigned as a field medic to Bravo Company near the Cambodian border. To the grunts, she was Doc. To herself, she was still the farm girl from Ohio who'd signed up to patch wounds, not make them. That night, her unit was dug into a half-circle of sandbags around a small clearing. The outpost was little more than tin roofs and mud walls, a way station meant to watch the trails cutting through the jungle. It was supposed to be quiet. But when the first mortar slammed into the tree line, the night split open. The blast tore the ground, shaking leaves and mud into the air. Evelyn dropped flat, hands over her helmet. Another mortar screamed in, then another. The sky flared orange. Men shouted, running, some already hit. The company commander's voice barked through the chaos, then cut off mid-sentence. Her heart pounded. Training said stay low, wait for orders. But orders weren't coming. Sergeant Miller staggered past her, his legs shredded. "Medic, Doc, help me," he gasped, collapsing into the mud. Evelyn crawled to him, hands moving by instinct, tourniquet high on the thigh, tighten, tighten. Her fingers slipped on blood, but she kept turning. He screamed, then passed out. She didn't even notice the shrapnel tearing through the radio tent until sparks lit the clearing. The outpost was blind. "Where's the LT?" someone yelled. No answer. Another voice. "He's gone." Her stomach clenched. If the officers were dead, then it was just chaos now.
She looked up. The tree line shimmered with muzzle flashes. Figures moved in the shadows, enemy soldiers advancing under cover of fire. The Americans were pinned, men diving for weapons, some too dazed to fight. Evelyn pressed her back to the sandbags, breath ragged. She wasn't supposed to fire. She wasn't even supposed to be in the fight. Her rifle was standard issue, but she barely qualified with it. Still, she saw Corporal Davis, barely 19, frozen in terror beside a jammed M16. She saw Miller bleeding out, his face pale. And she saw the men looking around, realizing no one was in command. And she felt it, that pull inside her. Not fear, something sharper. She grabbed her rifle. Mud clung to her boots as she climbed the sandbag wall, shoulders square, weapon steady. She exhaled once, then fired. The crack of her first shot cut through the jungle. A figure in the tree line fell. Another muzzle flash, another pull of the trigger. For the first time, the incoming fire faltered. The soldiers around her looked up,
stunned. The medic was standing. The medic was fighting. And for one impossible heartbeat, the jungle seemed to hesitate before roaring back with even greater fury. What happens when the enemy realizes the weakest link is suddenly the strongest one holding the line? Bullets tore across the sandbags, snapping wood, hissing through the humid air. Evelyn ducked low, heart hammering, but she didn't freeze. She rose, rifle tight against her shoulder, and squeezed twice. Two silhouettes crumpled in the tree line. For a heartbeat, the jungle went quiet. "Doc!" Corporal Davis slid into the mud beside her, M16 jammed, panic on his face. "It's jammed! I can't—" "Sports!" Slap, pull, observe, release, tap, shoot. Her hands moved over his, guiding him like she would a patient's breathing tube. The bolt slammed shut, weapon ready. Davis blinked, stunned. "You've got this." And just like that, his fear turned into fire. Behind them, Sergeant Miller groaned, blood still pouring from his leg. Evelyn checked the tourniquet, tight, but shock was winning. She injected morphine, scribbled a mark on his collar, and grabbed another bandage. Her fingers were slick with blood when the next mortar screamed in. The blast shredded the radio tent. Sparks lit the clearing. Their lifeline was gone. "Where's command?" someone shouted. The answer came back like a death sentence. "They're gone." Evelyn's stomach turned cold. No officers, no orders, just chaos. She spotted the secondary PRC-25, half buried under canvas, antenna bent but intact, battery still clipped in. Maybe it could work. She snatched it up and slung it across her back. For the first time, the squad looked to her, not as a medic, not as a woman, but as the only steady thing in the storm. What happens when the person everyone ignored suddenly becomes the last thread holding them together? She crawled to the berm. Claymores still sat unused, faceplates muddy. Training surged back. She planted one, clipped the wire, and dug the clacker into the dirt beside her. On her right, Jackson's M60 roared, muzzle flashing. "Short bursts," she yelled. "Don't burn the barrel." He listened. They always listened to authority spoken without doubt. The tree line exploded in muzzle flashes. Figures slipped through the brush, sappers, low and fast. Evelyn yanked a flare pistol from a fallen soldier and fired. The sky erupted in white light. For one cruel moment, she saw everything. The enemy crawling closer, packs on their backs, eyes cold and sure. Then she saw something worse. A claymore set backwards. Front toward enemy faced the Americans. One wrong squeeze and it would shred their own line. The officer who placed it never lived long enough to correct it. Her blood ran ice. And then she saw him, a sapper, sliding through the wire, clutching a satchel charge, fuse already hissing. "Inside the wire!" Davis screamed. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She vaulted the berm, mud streaking her face, and skidded across the ground. The claymore loomed inches away, nose pointing at her own men. She twisted it with trembling hands, dragging the plate forward, sweat burning her eyes. The sapper rose behind her. She felt his breath before she saw his smile. In his hand, the satchel charge sputtered with fire. One heartbeat, one mistake. Who lives when the bomb is already burning? Evelyn had the clacker in her left hand, the claymore wire in her right, and the enemy staring straight at her. Around her, the jungle thundered, men screamed, and the fuse kept spitting sparks toward the end. There was no time left to choose. She had one weapon facing her enemy and another aimed at her own men. Which would she fire? The fuse hissed louder, spitting sparks into the night. Evelyn's breath came shallow, every second stretching too long, too sharp. She had one claymore pointed at her men, one satchel charge inches from her chest, and a decision no one trained her for. She let instinct take the wheel. She slammed her boot into the sapper's wrist, driving the satchel into the mud. His grip slipped, but the fuse kept burning. She yanked the claymore sideways, aimed into the tree line, and squeezed the clacker. The world cracked open. Steel balls shredded the jungle in a vicious arc. The sapper took the blast full in the chest, hurled backward into darkness, charge tumbling from his hand. It landed smoking in the mud. Evelyn dove, ripping the fuse free with trembling fingers just as it sparked its last breath. For a heartbeat, the clearing held still. Then the jungle screamed again. What do you do when death gives you a second chance and the enemy doesn't stop to let you breathe? She crawled back to the berm, lungs burning. Davis grabbed her arm. You're crazy? You could have blown us all.
She shook him off, eyes blazing. Better me than every man here. He stared, then nodded once. Respect wasn't asked for. It was taken in moments like this. Behind them, Reed clutched his shoulder, blood soaking through the bandage. His voice cracked. Doc, you're supposed to be patching us, not leading a war. I'm still patching, she muttered, shoving gauze into his wound with one hand while firing 3 rounds with the other. It was messy medicine, but medicine all the same. The handset on her back crackled to life. Bravo waypoint, this is fire support. Shout out. She counted under her breath. 3, 2. The ground beyond the wire convulsed. Shells thundered down, tearing trees apart, flinging branches skyward. Men sheared, a ragged cry of survival. But Evelyn's voice cut sharp through the noise. They'll adjust. Don't relax. Because she knew better. Artillery scared men, but it didn't kill determination. And the ones coming tonight weren't just determined. They were desperate. Sometimes the enemy isn't trying to win. They're trying to make sure you lose no matter the cost. Another wave surged forward, firing wild, rushing the perimeter. Jackson's M60 rattled, spitting fury. Tran fed the belt, shouting over the roar. Davis fired clean bursts. The men were holding, for now. Evelyn crawled to the far side of the berm, where a terrified private sat frozen, rifle across his lap. His face was ash pale, eyes wide. She seized his helmet, forcing his gaze to hers. You want to live? Aim at the tree line. Fire when you see movement. Don't think, just squeeze. She pressed his rifle up, hand steadying his. When the next shadow darted, the boy fired. The shadow fell. His breath shuddered. Good. Again. Everywhere she moved, she stitched holes back together. Rifles, wounds, courage. A medic with a rifle wasn't supposed to lead, but tonight, leadership wasn't about rank. It was about survival. Then the night changed. Mortars stopped. The sporadic fire ceased. The jungle hushed. Men glanced at one another, uneasy. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She'd seen this before, in the briefings, in the whispered stories of ambushes. Silence was never mercy. Silence meant something worse was crawling their way. She fired another flare. The light washed over the clearing. That's when she saw them. Figures crouched in the brush, scores of them, waiting. They weren't charging blindly anymore. They were organizing. Lines forming, shapes moving with deliberate purpose. A coordinated assault. Her gut twisted. This wasn't a raid. This was an attempt to erase the outpost from the map. When the jungle shifts from chaos to order, you know the storm hasn't passed. It's only gathering. She grabbed the handset. Fire support. Adjust fire. Danger close. I say again, danger close. Static spat back, but the faint reply came. Copy, Bravo. Rounds inbound. She turned to her men, mud and smoke streaking her face. This next volley is ours or theirs. Stay low, stay alive.
The first shell screamed overhead. The jungle erupted, brighter and closer than before. Shock waves flattened grass, rattled bone. The berm quivered under her palms. And still, through the haze, she saw movement. Enemy soldiers pressing forward through fire itself, willing to die just to close the distance. One broke through, rifle raised. Jackson dropped him with a snapshot. Another followed, grenade in hand. Jackson's M60 cut him down mid-step, but more kept coming. They weren't stopping. Then, a scream tore through the line. Davis, clutching his chest, blood spilling hot and fast. He collapsed against the sandbags, gasping. Evelyn slid beside him, fingers pressing into the wound. It was bad, arterial, high. "Stay with me," she whispered, shoving gauze deep, hands slick. His eyes fluttered. "Don't you quit, Davis. Not here. Not tonight." Around her, the world was fire and still, but her focus narrowed to the rise and fall of his chest. Then she heard it, the sound that made her blood run cold. A whistle, high and sharp, cutting through the chaos. Not their artillery, not mortars. It was a bugle, a signal. The enemy was charging, full force, and Evelyn realized the jungle wasn't trying to kill them quietly. It was about to drown them in fire all at once. The bugle's wail cut through the night like a blade, and the jungle answered with thunder. Dozens, maybe hundreds of enemy soldiers surged from the tree line, bayonets flashing, voices rising in one terrible roar. The ground trembled beneath their boots. Evelyn braced against the burn, sweat burning her eyes, rifle shaking not from fear, but from the sheer force of what was coming. She yanked the handset. "Fire support, fire for effect, now!" The reply crackled. Rounds out, splashing 20. 20 seconds, an eternity. She ripped another flare into the sky. White light bathed the clearing, and the enemy charge came into view. Wave after wave sprinting through smoke and fire, fearless. The American line shrank back, men pressing their helmets down, some whispering prayers, others frozen. Evelyn stood tall. "Hold your fire until they're close. Make every shot count." First wave hit the wire. Claymores detonated, shredding bodies into dust, but more soldiers vaulted over the wreckage. Bullets hissed. Grenades tumbled. Evelyn fired, dropped one, pivoted, fired again. Her rifle felt like an extension of her heart, pumping fury instead of blood. Beside her, Jackson's M60 poured fire until a barrel glowed. Tran swapped it out mid-belt, hands blistered, never missing a beat. Davis groaned behind him, barely conscious, blood soaking Evelyn's knees as she fought to keep him alive with one hand and the rest alive with the other. Then, the artillery arrived. Shells screamed overhead and slammed into the tree line, tearing the jungle apart in columns of flame. Charge buckled under the blast. Men flung like broken doors. The roar of explosions drowned every human sound. The sky glowed orange, the earth itself shaking. For a moment, it felt like salvation. But Evelyn knew better.
The survivors kept coming, blackened, burned, crawling through mud, still dragging rifles. The jungle wasn't just fire. It was willpower, endless and merciless. What if the enemy's strength isn't their numbers, but the fact they don't care how many die to break you? One soldier broke through, grenade primed. Evelyn shot him mid-step, but the grenade fell inside the berm. She dove, grabbed it, and hurled it back over the wall. It exploded mid-air, showering sparks. Her ears rang. She forced herself upright, chest heaving. Behind her, Reed shouted, "They're inside!" Evelyn spun. 3 enemy soldiers had breached through a gap on the flank. One lunged with a bayonet. Reed's rifle clicked, empty. Evelyn tackled the attacker, mud smearing her face as the blade slashed the air inches from her throat. She rammed her helmet into his nose, ripped his weapon free, and fired point blank. He fell limp. She staggered to her feet, chest pounding. Her men were watching her, wide-eyed, stunned, not at the enemy, at her. She didn't have time to think about it. Get that flank sealed, sandbags, anything you can pile, move! They obeyed without hesitation. The handset screeched again. Bravo waypoint, say status. She pressed the button, voice rough. We're holding, but barely. Send everything you have. Static swallowed the line. She looked back at her men, faces streaked with mud and terror, but eyes locked on her. She wasn't supposed to lead, but in that moment, rank didn't matter. She was the line. Then, a new sound rose from the tree line. Not shouts, not bugles, something deeper. The rattling clatter of tracks. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Tanks. The ground vibrated as the first silhouette appeared through the smoke. An armored beast, turrets swiveling, cannon lowering. Bullets you can dodge, mortars you can pray through. But what do you do when steel itself rolls toward you? Evelyn's hands clenched the handset. Fire support, armor inbound, repeat, armor inbound. No response, just static. The tank's gun fired. The shell screamed overhead, detonating behind the berm. The shockwave knocked men flat. Evelyn slammed into the mud, ears ringing, vision blurred. When she pushed herself up, she saw the second tank emerge, followed by infantry pouring behind them. Her men were breaking. She saw it in their eyes, fear turning to despair. The belief she had built with every action was cracking under the weight of steel. She grabbed Davis's limp hand, squeezing hard. "Stay with me," she whispered. Then she stood, climbing the berm, standing tall in the burning light. Her silhouette against the flames made every head turn. She raised her rifle high, voice raw, tearing through the chaos. "We hold! Do you hear me? We hold!" The men roared back not in words, but in fury, rifles snapping up, firing into the night. The line steadied, stitched back together by her voice. But Evelyn's eyes stayed fixed on the tank rolling closer, turret aimed square at her chest.
The medic who was never meant to fight now stood alone against a machine built to erase everything in its path. The tank's cannon locked on her position, and Evelyn's world narrowed to a single black barrel, yawning like the mouth of death. Her pulse slowed. Her men shouted for her to get down, but she didn't move. She couldn't, not when the line depended on the illusion that she was unbreakable. The gun fired. She threw herself sideways as the shell ripped through the berm. The blast sent dirt, metal, and screams into the air. Evelyn's body slammed into the mud, ribs aching, helmet half cracked. She rolled, ears ringing, and forced her eyes open. The berm where she'd stood seconds earlier was gone, just a crater belching smoke. The tank lurched forward, grinding the ground beneath its tracks. Another loomed behind it, infantry swarming in its shadow. The line faltered. Men scrambled, some dropping their rifles, others firing wildly at armor that bullets couldn't touch. Evelyn crawled back up, dragging the radio handset with her. "Fire support! Armor in the open! Coordinates following!" Static hissed. She slammed the side of the set. "Come on, damn it, answer!" Finally, a voice bled through. "Copy, Bravo! Fire mission! Stand by!" Stand by. 2 words that meant too much waiting. She scrambled to the ammo shack again, lungs searing, and tore through crates. Amid loose rounds and broken bandoliers, she found it. A tube, olive drab, heavier than it looked. An M72 Law. 1 shot, disposable, but it could change everything. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. She'd fired one only once in training, years ago. But training wasn't the jungle. Training wasn't this. She ran back toward the berm, shouting over the roar of the tanks. "Cover me!" Jackson's M60 thundered, spitting bursts at the infantry, buying her seconds. Tran cursed and kept the belt feeding. Davis, pale and barely conscious, tried to lift his rifle, the will to fight still sparking in him. Evelyn slid into position, law balanced on her shoulder, sight flipped up. She exhaled, aimed at the tank's flank, squeezed. The rocket streaked out, a white comet against the night. It slammed into the tank's side, erupting in a plume of fire. The beast shuddered, tracks locking, smoke pouring from its hull. The infantry around it broke, scattering. The men behind the berm roared with renewed fury, the sound drowning their fear. Courage spreads like fire, but fire can burn out just as fast when another shadow rises. Because from the tree line, the second tank rolled forward, untouched, turret swiveling toward the outpost. Evelyn's chest heaved. One rocket, one tank down, but nothing left for the other. She dropped the empty launcher, grabbed her rifle, and turned back to her men. "Stay low! Make every bullet count!"
The tank fired. The blast ripped through the clearing, shredding sandbags, scattering bodies. Reed screamed, clutching his leg, blood pumping. Evelyn slid to him, hands moving without thought. Tourniquet, tighten, reassure. Her voice cracked but didn't break. "You'll live. You hear me? You'll live." Above them, the tank lurched closer, crushing wire and bodies alike. Its turret shifted, slow and deliberate, like a predator savoring the kill. Evelyn's mind raced. No more rockets, artillery too far behind. All she had were her hands, her voice, and her refusal to give up. Then the handset barked, "Splash over!" Her heart jolted. "Splash out!" The jungle erupted. A wall of fire fell just beyond the tanks, shells ripping through trees, collapsing the ground itself. The second tank staggered as shrapnel rained across its armor. Crew stunned. Evelyn seized the moment. "All guns! Fire everything!" The line lit up. Rifles cracked in unison. The M60 screamed. Grenades arced over the berm. The infantry wavered under the storm. For the first time, the charge faltered. But Evelyn saw it. The tank was still moving, crawling through the fire, turret jerking back toward them. She clenched her teeth. There was no time left. She sprinted forward, past her men, into the open clearing. Shouts erupted behind her, but she didn't stop. The tank loomed, cannon lowering. She dove onto its track, fingers scraping metal, and hauled herself up. Heat seared her palms, smoke choking her lungs. She crawled across the burning hull, pistol in hand. The hatch slammed open. A crewman burst out, rifle raised. She fired once, point blank. He fell back inside. She yanked a grenade from her vest, pulled the pin, and dropped it into the hatch. She leapt clear, rolling into the mud as the tank erupted behind her, turret blasting skyward in a shower of fire and steel. One tank down by luck, one by rage. But how many more waited in the shadows? She staggered back to the berm, chest heaving, ears ringing. Her men stared at her in disbelief. A medic, covered in soot and blood, had just done what even their officers hadn't. She raised her rifle high, her voice hoarse but unshakable. "We're still alive, and as long as we're alive, we fight." The men roared, a sound louder than the jungle, louder than the fire. For the first time, belief spread like a contagion. They weren't just holding an outpost anymore. They were fighting for each other. But Evelyn's eyes scanned the tree line, because she knew the jungle wasn't done. Not yet. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. And then, through the smoke, she saw a third silhouette rising, bigger, darker, and far worse than any tank. Through the smoke, Evelyn saw it. Another silhouette rolling forward, taller, heavier, its turret a dark crown against the burning jungle. This wasn't a light tank. This was an armored monster, its cannon thicker, its plates glistening in the firelight. For a second,
Even the enemy infantry hung back, letting the beast take the lead. Her men went silent. Hope, the fragile flame she had fought to keep alive, wavered. Jackson muttered, "That thing'll tear us apart." Dran crossed himself. Even Davis, barely conscious, whispered, "We're done." Evelyn's jaw locked. She refused to let silence become surrender. "No," she snapped, voice steel. "We've come too far. We're not done until I say we're done." When even belief itself starts to break, what do you give your men? Orders or hope? She seized the handset. "Fire support. We need everything you've got. Danger close, right on our position." The reply crackled. "Negative, Bravo. Too close. You'll be wiped out." Her teeth clenched. "If you don't drop it here, there won't be a Bravo left to save. Send it, now." Static. Then, rounds out. She dropped the handset, turned to her men, faces pale, eyes wide, waiting. "This is it. You fire until your rifles melt. You breathe when I tell you to breathe, and you don't give them an inch. Do you understand me?" The roar that answered her shook the berm. Fear had turned to fury. The monster rolled closer. Its cannon fired. The blast obliterated the far wall of the outpost, showering dirt and screams. Evelyn staggered but didn't fall. She sprinted, weaving through the chaos, searching the rubble for anything that could hurt steel. Her hands closed on a bundle of C4, wires dangling, left behind in the supply crate. Her heart hammered. Explosives, enough to punch through armor, if she could get close. Sometimes, the only way to save everyone is to walk straight into the fire yourself. She stuffed the charge into her vest, grabbed a detonator, and crawled low across the mud. Bullets hissed overhead, tracers burning the air. The tank's turret swung, sweeping the berm, pounding it with round after round. Men scattered, shouting, firing wildly. Evelyn kept moving, body pressed to the earth, inch by inch. Closer. She reached the tank's flank, heat scorching her skin. Its tracks ground forward, chewing soil and bone. She shoved the charge beneath the armor plate, hands trembling, then yanked the wire taut. A shout behind her. Enemy infantry had spotted her, rifles snapping up. She rolled, firing her pistol, dropping 1, 2, but more came. A burst tore past her shoulder, close enough to rip fabric. She slammed the detonator. The world split open. The C4 erupted beneath the beast, fire tearing upward through its belly. The tank convulsed, metal shrieking, turret spinning, before it froze. Smoke poured from its hatches. The monster groaned once and died.
Evelyn staggered back, half deaf, lungs burning. The men on the berm saw it fall. For a moment, no one moved. Then a cheer rose, ragged and desperate, rolling through the clearing. The enemy broke. What was left of their line wavered, then shattered, bodies disappearing into the tree line. The jungle swallowed them. Silence returned. Real silence, not the waiting kind. Victory doesn't always come with horns and flags. It comes with the sound of nothing left to kill you. Evelyn collapsed against the berm, chest heaving. Blood streaked her arms, most of it not hers. Around her, the wounded groaned, but they were alive. Reed clutched his leg, grinning through pain. Jackson sat smoking, hands still trembling on the M60. Davis, pale but breathing, rasped, "Doc, you just saved every one of us." She shook her head, voice hoarse. "No, we saved each other." The handset crackled again. "Bravo waypoint, status report." Evelyn lifted it with shaking fingers. "Bravo still here. Enemy armor destroyed. Outpost intact." A pause. Then the voice answered, quieter now, almost reverent. "Copy, Bravo. You held the line." She dropped the radio, letting it hang against her chest. For the first time all night, she allowed herself to feel the weight, not of her gear, not of her rifle, but of what she had done. A medic, trained to save lives, had become the weapon that preserved them. The jungle still smoldered, fires licking at broken trees. But inside the berm, among the wounded and the weary, something stronger than fire remained. Belief. And as dawn bled over the horizon, painting the sky gold over the smoke, Evelyn Carter knew one thing with absolute clarity. She had walked into the fire and carried every man out with her. Because in war, legends aren't born in parades. They're born in jungles that tried to erase them and failed.